We talk Tide on Wednesday night with Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. Join him on his radio show as well, 2 through 6 Central Time. That's out of Muscle Shows in Florence, Alabama. It's The Way It Is on Fox 97.9. All right. As we head down the home stretch of November, the scenarios start to play themselves out. There are a number of projections made over, okay, let's see if that team can run the table, or if this upset happens, or if chalk continues to unfold over the course of November. Let's see, that's going to happen. Or what if these two teams tie with one loss in looking at college football playoff scenario? So we get to jump on it here and have some fun and extend a conversation that Steve had earlier in the week on his radio show. So Stephen, I will let you set this one up.
What was crazy was we had a caller, or we had a text come in, and the text said, if you were to have 3 to 4 undefeated Power 5 teams, and let's say Alabama loses to Florida State but still runs the table and wins the SEC, does Alabama get left out? And my co-host Matt, who's kind of a fiery guy, Matt says, Matt said if there were maybe 2 or 3 undefeated teams and a one-loss Alabama gets in. But if there's 4 undefeated Power 5 conference champions, 4 undefeated, haven't been beaten, Power 5 conference champions, he feels as if Alabama will get left out. And I agree with him, because you have the 4 undefeated Power 5. As good as Alabama is, as much money as Alabama drives in, not just for the SEC, but college football, period, as strong as this legacy has become, under Nick Saban, if Alabama was to have one loss and you're going up against 4 undefeated Power 5 schools, I don't see Alabama getting in there.
Okay, I will take the same conversation, but I'll flip it around because I had this conversation earlier in the week with Chris Ross. He covers the Big 12 because of the lack of respect that the Big 12 has had in recent years, and specifically since the college football playoff started in 2014, and because of the lack of a championship game, which the Big 12 will have this season. We know what the results have been, that the Big 12...
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. Yeah, they join everybody else and actually play a championship game. But I think unless things drastically change and the Big 12 plays better against the other 4 conferences, which we did not see last year. So, for example, Oklahoma, the dominant team in the Big 12, running the table in the conference at 9-0, lost its 2 big out-of-conference games and didn't look impressive in either one against Ohio State and Houston. Therefore, it brought down, along with about a 2-7 out-of-league record for the Big 12. So the Big 12 was looked down upon, and rightfully so. It didn't step up on the big stage in the eyes of the College Football Playoff Committee. So it was going to be more difficult for the Big 12, and unless things change drastically, I think the Big 12 is going to have to play one game better, its champion, to break a tie against another team out of another Power 5. So if they're up against a Clemson or Florida State or Ohio State or Alabama, those schools that have gained some prestige and some equity based on performance on the field would probably get the nod even in a one-game more loss situation than the champion of the Big 12. So I'll speak to the Alabama situation, and I think it's much more complicated than this situation here. That's why these games in the non-conference schedule are so vital and important, really across the board. Even the Vanderbilt-Kansas State game or the South Carolina-NC State game to a much lesser degree, those are going to come up on the radar because near the end of the season, there's going to be thoughts that, oh, the SEC dominated non-conference play, or the Pac-12 did, or whoever it is, versus, oh, the Big Ten underachieved, that they were only 3-8 against the other Power Fives. But more so, the Florida State-Alabama matchup, the Georgia-Notre Dame matchup, the Ohio State-Oklahoma matchup, those games are really scrutinized in terms of building a resume for the conference. Therefore, if the SEC, which I believe to be the best conference in college football, I think it's close, but I think 1 through 14, there are no Purdue's or Illinois or Virginia's in the SEC, that the conference top to bottom is going to prove to be the best conference. And if that plays out, then your scenario is an interesting one, because Alabama may get the nod over a team with one more loss out of another power conference, especially if it's out of the Big 12. The extension of that conversation and that debate, Stephen, could be, what if Alabama doesn't win the SEC? What if it's Florida or Auburn or LSU in that same situation? Are they going to get the same respect as in Alabama?
And that's the biggest question, because as of right now, Alabama, the main bell cow in the SEC. When I look at LSU, you have to think, can Matt Canada do wonders with Danny Etling? Can he make him slightly above average? That's the question. LSU lost quite a bit off that defense last year. No more Jamal Adams, no more Tre'Davious White, no more Davon Godchow, and Duke Riley's gone. Kendall Beckwith's gone. Yes, you return Arden Key and Dante Jackson, but is this defense up to snuff? And then you look at Texas A&M. I mean, good God, A&M. You hired John Chavis, and you still can't stop the run. What's the issue with A&M? I look at Ole Miss, and Ole Miss not being able to play for a bowl game, but will they be able to play spoiler this year with when it's gotten Shea Patterson, DK Metcalf, Van Jefferson, and a Marcus Haynes on that defense? And then even Auburn, Jarrett Stidham, yes, he was named the quarterback. Yes, Auburn's had a lot of success with junior college quarterbacks, i.e. Cam Newton, Nick Marshall. But then at the same time, defensively, can it find some guys to replace Montravis Adams and Carl Lawson on the defensive side of the football? So for the SEC, it's not only who can challenge Alabama, but then also who can hone in on getting a winning record and be coached well, because Kentucky and Vanderbilt, they're slowly coming up. They're quickly making a transition, a trend forward. But if you look at the SEC, Mark, who are the marquee coaches besides Nick Saban? You have Brett Bielema, who's okay. You have Dan Mullen, who's okay. You have Kevin Sumlin, who to me at times looks like a junior college coach. You have Gus Malzahn, who Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, sometimes Auburn's good, sometimes Auburn's bad, versus some of these other conferences where you have the big-time name coaches. In the SEC, it's Nick Saban and whoever else feels like they can rise up. So in the Southeastern Conference, it's not just competing with Alabama, but who can rise up from a coaching standpoint and kind of meet that standard that Nick Saban's kind of taking on right now.
Through one season and more importantly, through one recruiting period, I think Kirby Smart might be the guy to emerge from the pack. I think based on track record, nobody for the first time in a long time in the SEC, nobody's there to challenge. There's nobody with a track record with a national championship, i.e. Les Miles, or even with a long-standing run of success like Mark Richt. The closest would be Gus Malzahn, who, of course, took over that Auburn debacle of an 0-8 club in 2012 and turned it into a near national championship team. But since then, they've been on the decline, and Auburn, once again, the chic pick to upset Alabama and win the SEC Western Division. The team that I really am intrigued by, again, are the Georgia Bulldogs, with the 9 starters returning on defense, the two-headed monster at running back. A blessing in disguise in a sense that those two guys were injury-riddled their last couple of years, talking about Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, that they stay in Athens for that final senior season to see what they can do, and the progression of Jacob Eason from freshman to sophomore, and see if he takes that step up. He's not going to get a whole lot of experienced help from the outside. Some guys that are little known to the college football world are going to have to step up on the periphery for Georgia to help out Jacob Eason.
They are, but that's why this is college football. We get to see the unsung heroes, who's ready to step up, who's ready to ball, and who's ready to really prove that they belong in this league. That's why we enjoy college football.
All right. He is Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. Stephen, before we let you go, we want to make sure that people outside the area of Muscle Shoals in Florence, Alabama can catch you on Fox 97.9. Where do they catch the app that they can download for your show the way it is?
If you have an iPhone, you can get the app from the iPhone App Store. Just search WSBM Fox Sports Shows in the iPhone App Store, WSBM Fox Sports Shows, and you can get that app there. If you have an Android phone, the TuneIn Radio app is good for you. TuneIn Radio app. If you have an Android, you can get that from Google Play. Just search WSBM 1340. That's the AM dial 1340, but you can still pick up all the great content. And then foxsportshows.com and hit the listen live link, the third way to check out the way it is.
All right, Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama, of course, that's his flagship site as well. So let's not forget about Touchdown Alabama as well. Stephen, we always appreciate the insight. It's always a great conversation, sir.
Thank you, Mark.